Hello and welcome to the Race Dilemma podcast. My name is Drew Hawley and I'm here with my brother and co-host Abel Sloane. This podcast is really about giving a voice to those people of a mixed heritage, initially within our own family whose racial background is not always obvious due to their pale skin colour, and have found themselves to be at the centre of a personal race dilemma, and at times having to prove their ethnic credentials in order to be heard.
And of course we have broadened the conversation out into the many corners of some of the so-called problems of being from a racially mixed background. And if you feel you may want to contribute or have a story to tell and would like to be featured on an episode, please reach out to us on the Race Dilemma podcast at gmail.com. And if you really like these episodes, please rate us and leave a review on Apple Podcasts, and feel free to share with your family and friends. Okay, well, on today's episode, we have my son Abel, and although he's only 2 years younger than Florence, his appearance is different. He's got an olive skin tone, he's got brown curly hair, and according to his sister, he looks a little bit more exotic. Okay. I mean, as for his experiences, this is the first time he's ever expressed an interest in voicing an opinion on his mixed race heritage. And I'm assuming there never really was a problem, but I guess if there ever was, we'll find out today.
Abel, it's really nice to have you on the call with us. Finally, we got you here.
Mm-hmm. Nice to be here.
Well, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? Like, what do you do? What's your back? Yeah, exactly. Where'd you start? Because I know you're a bit of a sort of quiet entrepreneur, and I think it'd be really good just to kind of give the listeners a kind of a bit of a background of what you do and where you come from, like where you grew up as well.
Grew up in Beckenham, in the borough of Bromley. Where is it? In Kent, I guess. The address is Kent, but I would describe it as being in suburb and South
That's
London.
Right.
Then went to university in New Cross at Goldsmiths, so I was never too far away from that area, which was only sort of 12 minutes on the train. Left there, started getting interested in furniture, restoration, making things in the garage with guidance from Dad. Let me use his tools. And then from there, still does, yeah. Still got his tools in my toolbox. Just started working for myself. It just happened accidentally, almost. And now I run a business with my partner, buying and selling specialist design furniture, sourcing for interior designers and private clients, that sort of thing, with a bit of writing on the side.
Very good. You've also published a book, right?
Yeah, self-published book.
Self-published, that's right. Tell us about the book.
It was sort of an exploration into a British designer in the 30s he was an engineer really rather than a designer, and there wasn't much printed material about him, so I sort of got in touch with family members and a few archives and old magazines from the period, and just sort of put together this information. It's a small book, nothing major.
You've also been featured in a few magazines as well, which I think is just brilliant. Just to kind of like, you're my nephew, and I've seen you grow up, mm-hmm. and to see your progression, from a boy into a young man into a man, and just seeing your progression is just really, it's lovely. It's lovely to see,
Thanks.
So you're almost 30 now.
Yeah, next week.
Right. Next week, woohoo! Which is great, and so what we wanted to do with this particular episode is to obviously get your take, your view on the race dilemma. So
mm-hmm.
Obviously your sister Florence Sloane, we featured her in one of the episodes, and she gave us her take of growing up and what it was like being mixed race and pale in
mm-hmm.
skin tone. But obviously you look slightly different. You've got darker hair, you've got brown eyes. and you're slightly more olive toned than your sister as well. And I guess we wanted to just sort of kick off and ask you the question that we usually ask everyone. And what was it like growing up? Did you have any dilemmas growing up as a kid? And what was your first sort of realization that actually my parents are obviously got mixed background. So my father's of mixed heritage, my mother's English, Irish. What was your first kind of recollection of?
I don't ever remember sort of that realization that my parents were different colours or that I was a different colour to other kids at school. I think, I don't remember ever realizing that. It seemed to always be there, or I was always aware, maybe, or was never aware. I'm not sure which way around it is.
But I mean, there's always a point though where you become aware, and you're like, actually, this is my heritage, this is my background. People might ask me, actually, but you're not English, so where are you from, and how, where do you.
Yeah. Well, people have always asked. I think at school, sort of the Turkish-looking boys always ask and think that I'm one of them, for example, or something.
Yeah.
But at primary school, there was a couple of instances where people using the P word, and
right,
not even if it was not directed at me, and hearing it, I would know that it kind of was directed at me.
Yes.
That included me in that.
How comes, son, that when it happened, did you not think to say anything to me or your mum? Or didn't you want the fuss?
Didn't I want the fuss?
Or didn't you think? Did you feel powerless? Did you think that no one can make this any better? It is what it is. If I tell mum and dad, it's not just.
Yeah, there was one. I think the first time I did tell mum, and I'm sure but mum. From what I don't remember, but from what I've heard since then, she confronted the mum of the boy in the playground or something.
Oh right. Can you remember what it was? Can you remember?
I remember the kid's name.
You can say his name now. Or maybe not. I don't know.
No,
I don't know. He might listen.
All
right.
But do you remember what was said? Like what and how it made you feel? How did it?
We were in assembly, and he was in the year above me, so they sat. I don't know why he was sitting in front of our class or something. Or they were walking into assembly, and he just looked around and just said the P word at me, like kind of with a smile on his face. I don't remember feeling like angry or anything, but do I? I don't know. I must have been 7 or 8 or something. And then it happened another time with, cab driver's stepson, dad.
Oh yeah. Was that him? Was that the same?
No, that was a different time. Him.
All right.
He said it as well in the playground or something. I didn't tell you, but I think I said this last time we spoke. Coincidentally, we went round to Jimmy's house on that evening on the way back from school for some reason. So we were there outside the house, and you were talking to him on that afternoon that his stepson said something, and the boy, he was walking up the road and he saw us, and he turned around and sort of ran down the road. I think he thought we were there because I told you what he'd said or something. It was just, we were just coincidentally at the house.
And when I did it, I mean, it's strange, isn't it? I mean, that boy that you're talking about, it was all sort of sweetness and light. That I never had any indication that he would have thought like that or said anything like that. It's very strange. It's very strange, and it's very two-faced. It's nasty, and that's the worst of it, isn't it? When people say stuff like that, it just goes to show you just don't know where you are with people. Better for them to show themselves, so you do know where you are. Yeah. And you can make a decision then, rather than them keeping that sort of attitude to themselves. It it's easier to deal with someone who shows themselves to be whatever they are than to hide it, and it come out later.
Yeah.
You know, I've found anyway.
And how old were you when this particular incident happened?
Well, I was younger than, must have been 8 or 9.
Oh, maybe. Really? So that
it was in primary school, yeah.
Right. Okay. So I guess at that age, you kind of know what these words are, but it probably doesn't affect you as much as like if you're a bit older, you're a bit more kind of aware of your heritage. You might be. I don't know. It might have been different for you. I don't know.
I don't know. I always felt like I was aware of our heritage and things, because I feel like I discussed it with a few other people in my class who were. Also, there was Sham, who lived on our road, whose parents were Indian, and there was Arjun and other people in the class, Jaheen, who were all Asian-y of some description.
Oh yeah, Jaheen, yeah.
Yeah, he was Bangladeshi parents.
So I was going to ask you, so like growing up in Beckenham, you went to Langley School for Boys. Like, did you at the time? What was the kind of ratio of, say, white kids, black kids, Asian kids, mixed kids?
If you looked at a glance at a picture of one of the classes, you'd think it was majority white boys at Langley. Like, you'd see maybe 2 or 3 black or brown faces, but I think if you were to look closer, you see that there's a lot of Turkish kind of names.
Yeah.
Or, Arabic kind of names.
Yeah.
I
can remember. Now you say that, I can remember.
Yeah. And there's a few sort of Eastern European names in there. Even, to talk to any of them, you wouldn't know. They've all grown up in Beckenham or near.
And did you, at the time, feel like you were, like, with your circle of friends, did you have any particular circle of friends that you gravitated more towards, or was it quite mixed and varied in terms of their race?
I think I didn't gravitate towards anyone necessarily, but I think my group of friends were mostly white. There's a couple of nondescript sort of tan skins in there, which I think probably that's how people view me as. I think just other sort of, don't know, Southern European or something, Middle Eastern-y. Yeah.
Is that little box in the application form? It's like white other, Asian other, or just
I mean,
other.
your mates that came to the house, whether it was for skateboarding or homework or whatever it is they came for, whatever it is you were doing, they came to the house. Your mum made them pizza, or they had whatever it is, pasta or whatever it is, they came for dinner. They're all fine, weren't they? They're all good kids. They didn't.
Yeah.
They seemed to be nice kids. There was never and that's really why we got the impression from you that there didn't seem to be a problem with you and your mates, and with you. If there was a problem, you certainly kept it well hidden from us. And I did ask you, if you remember, from time to time, is everything okay? Even recently, what was it like in school? Did you? And you really didn't seem. I got a shrug of the shoulders. Yes, Dad. But. No, I'm all right.
In that sense, there was never problems as such. No one ever. I don't know. No one was ever horrible about anything, or a lot of people don't even ask what is going on. They just, I think they presume that you're white sometimes, and just there's dark-haired boys in the school who are with white parents and things that not everyone asks, or
they just didn't care.
Yeah, or they didn't care. Yeah,
they just didn't bother. We're not bothered about anything in particular.
I didn't grow up in the 70s. It wasn't. it wasn't just brown and white people. Or
Yeah.
Especially when we were in sixth form at Langley, there was loads of different kids because the what do you call it? The radius for people going there was bigger, and there was a lot more racially going on there in the sixth form.
I always got the impression from you, looking at you as my son and looking at obviously like Florence as my daughter, I always got the impression that you knew you were slightly different. I felt that you knew you were slightly different, and you just embraced it, and more importantly, didn't particularly care what other people thought. You seemed comfortable. You seemed all right. And I think in some ways you embraced the difference, even though you were very young. I think growing up, hopefully you were made to feel proud of, well, I think you were, I know, are proud of where you came from. I remember coming into the school, for example, into your primary school, and doing a little session with the classroom, telling them about India and Mount Everest and all the rest of it, whatever it is we did. I think I even put a sari on the teacher.
You did.
And and she loved it. And I bought some photographs in the school of your ancestors, and primarily, really, I mean, I did that obviously for the class, and I did that because we just had a trip to India. I don't know if that was the time that it was. So you would have been about 8 years old, I think. But primarily, I remember thinking that one of the reasons I did it, and that was for you to feel and to understand that proud, and that you had a place in this world. You were someone. You were not just anybody. You were someone with a history, with a background, with a family, with an ancestral background, and something that you could be proud of. And I think by your reactions, all of your reactions in that particular time, I think it worked. I don't want to sound like I'm bigging myself up. That's not how I want to make it sound. But I thought about it. It was deliberate.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's why I feel like I never had that realization at any point, is because I knew from a young age that you constantly made us aware of who we were and where we were from, and maps on the wall and pictures of everyone. And obviously you see Grandma every weekend, who was brown, dark brown, and Granddad with an Australian accent, and cousins and everyone in and out. Uncle Uzo, Nigerian. Auntie Gerda, German, cheesecake. Didn't know where anyone or everything was from. I thought it was all from the same place.
So, as you know, for the reason for us starting the Race Dilemma podcast was on the back of a dilemma that your sister Florence was having around the time of the George Floyd incident, and that sparked a conversation with our cousin Stuart, as you know, and Florence was feeling, because she's pale in her skin tone, people see her as white. So I guess she felt a bit awkward to comment on the whole thing. And I guess that sparked a dilemma, which was the conversation she had with your dad. And I wondered if you experienced anything similar around the time of when all of that kicked off last year.
Not so much as I experienced it as it kicked off. I think maybe more than Florence, I have not paid more attention, but maybe included myself more in race relations, if that's the right term. Just things to do with race
conversations.
Race conversations. Yeah. I think even it doesn't sound irrelevant. It seems irrelevant, but even down to the films that you watch or music that you listen to, I think watching, even from a young age, watching Spike Lee films, listening to black music, or just being a bit more involved in things.
Yeah, black culture
outside. Yeah, black culture. Just diverse.
When I think back to your growing up and the diversity, as I mentioned to Florence, just in the home, the literature, the music, and I think it spread right across. And of course, it wasn't only, it was a lot of everything, wasn't it? It's a lot of everything. It wasn't only one thing. It was just diverse. It was just diverse. And as you say, the Spike Lee films and the literature, maybe the music we listened to, and it was all stuff like that. And it was gave you an awareness, I think, that probably maybe others around you were not experiencing. There's your mates outside and kids in the school, and so it seems anyway.
And if you listen to or watch or pay attention to anything created by non-white people, say the conversation is always there. It's always, race is always involved in it. And so I think I was more into that than Florence ever paid attention to it, maybe. And so that conversation that was being had.
I was just going to mention the Spike Lee films, and there are messages in all the Spike Lee films, aren't there? Everything that he does.
Yeah.
And I think we discussed them as we were watching them, or after we watched them, we talked about them.
So there wasn't so much of a dilemma for yourself around the time of, when those incidents happened, and you didn't feel like, because of the way I look, I can't really comment because people are not going to see me as being someone with a mixed heritage background, or.
I think what happened at the last summer, the Black Lives Matter movement, was a new shift, and I think I did feel a bit outside of it. I think, Dad, when you were growing up, you said you were either white and everyone else that wasn't white was just black. But I think this conversation, it went the other way. Is if you're for the Black Lives Matter group, if you're not black, then you don't have a say or an opinion in this. Even if you're brown, or if you're mixed race, even if you're anything but black, then you kind of need to keep your mouth shut because you don't have the experience that black people do in this country or in America. And I think that's what happened. I feel like
I can understand that. There is some truth in that, I guess. But I think what Abel was saying was right. I didn't know it was that strong, though. Because whenever I saw the people protesting in the Black Lives Matters protests themselves, a lot of the people were white, weren't they? A lot of the people,
yeah. No, it's no one's sort of being put down as such for supporting it or anything. But if we're talking about on social media or any other platforms, you can't talk about it unless you're black. You can't be a spokesperson, say, or
So what I found was that it almost opened a can of worms a bit, like for different kind of race groups. It almost went, oh, okay, you know what? I think now stuff has come to the surface. I think we can start talking about this more because of that particular incident. It's kind of opened up a bit for other groups and other with different ethnic backgrounds to kind of to talk about this and to bring stuff to the surface, I guess.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I don't think we should go down. I don't think we should. It's not really the road I wanted to go down, but otherwise we'd get into some sort of political debate, and that's not what this is about, really. The podcast initially is, to give voice to people like ourselves, Abel, whoever, people of a mixed, their experiences being mixed, and I suppose, really, as I'm saying it, this is exactly what you're saying, isn't it, Abel? That even though you are mixed, in that a couple of last summer, you felt that you on social media that you didn't have the right to have a voice about such things because of you would never experience, your experience would be different had you been completely black, say, is what I mean.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
And I suppose really that is, I mean, some of the stuff some of the names that you heard when you were growing up, I mean, I suppose really that is the dilemma that we talk about in itself, isn't it? So in a sense, you do know what it's like to feel different, but obviously not the same type of experience as someone who's as I say, completely black. But yeah.
Yeah, and there's obviously the thing that sparked the sort of the protest last summer was the George Floyd thing, and him not being a one-off incident, and that it's been happening for a long time in America, where people, African American men doing menial crimes are treated like they've just committed the worst thing on earth and killed because of it. But that's not to say that we can't say much about that, because we don't experience that. Walking down the road, we're not looked at by police. That's the thing. But but what it has brought up is conversations about the history of even the British Empire, and that's where I think we do have our voices and we can share that experience and everything.
Yeah, because we are part of it, aren't we? We're part of the historical movement and political changes.
So there is a crossover.
We're here, because of the empire.
So there is a crossover in that sense, but not so much in the kind of modern. No, not modern. Yeah.
Do you feel that? Do you feel then that? Do you feel that as you've gone on in life? I mean, you're going to be 30 next week, but as you've gone on in life, and when you're a schoolboy, a primary school boy, up to now, I mean, I get the feeling that the awareness has sort of increased as you've got older, as you've become more aware, as you've gone to college and university, or sixth form and university, the awareness has increased. And I think that it seems to me you've quite rightly. Yeah, I was just going to say you've embraced it with absolute pride, and you said earlier that you didn't think that you thought that people might see you as white. I mean, Florence thinks you're obviously different. You look a bit more exotic than her. She says her words, And I mean, when I came to see you at your flat, not this makes any difference. A Jewish man with a Hasidic Jewish man started talking to you in Spanish. I don't quite know what that was about, but he obviously thought you were from somewhere else. Yeah. So people do see you in a certain way. They do see you, and they make assumptions about it because the way you look. Because of how you look, and you look different to your sister.
And
I think you will get that. You will get that all through your life.
Yeah,
you will get that.
And even I was listening to a conversation with it wasn't Louis Theroux, someone else's podcast, and there was the comedian who's, I think she's Iranian or half Iranian, and she was describing her kids as being similar to me and Florence, and she was saying, even since last summer, there's sort of categories of this BAME word, Black, Asian, minority, ethnic, and she was sort of saying, would her son fall into that category but her daughter not, just because of the skin colour, even though ethnically they are exactly the same, and the problems that causes, because no one considers people who are mixed race or anything like that, or is it skin colour, or is it your ethnicity, or what, or culture? They're the kind of, not dilemmas as such, but they're the things I think about, or how people view.
That's where it starts becoming complicated, isn't it?
Or like just the fact that people have to categorize you, or have to put you into something.
Yeah, maybe one day they won't. Maybe one day people won't categorize you. But I know exactly what you mean, because I've spoken about this before, about me. People start categorizing you, and as I always say, they start treating you in a certain way, and so you start being a certain way. Because for whatever reason, I'm not quite sure, but I suppose it's a way of finding. Speaking personally, I suppose it's a way of finding out where one fits in and fitting in more comfortably. If people see you in a certain way, I don't know. It's very complicated. I can't even explain it really. I can't even explain it. But if people look at you and assume you're this, they start treating you as this, and therefore, as I said before, you start acting like that. whatever that means, whatever acting like it means. I'm not sure. What was acting like it? Wobbling our heads every time we ask the question. Yeah, the old Indian wobble. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, and the
I don't.
The categorization in terms of, like, she was talking about the BAME, I think sort of an award for being, some kind of BAME writer of whatever. And so the way that you are sort of judged is different just because of a skin color, or just because you're from a different part of the world, or whatever.
Absolutely.
And the standards are different just because you're not white or you are white. So these are the things that I've been thinking about in the last year. I think before I've been aware of it, but never thought so much about it and how it might affect me, or how it does or doesn't affect me.
Speaking on a personal level, one thing that stands out in my head, and I can't sort of get rid of it from my head because it's there, was when I got a job. When I got the job as a college lecturer, one of the colleagues that I was working with after I got the position said to me, and I worked really hard. I mean, I didn't think about it. All I was doing was working hard to get into that position and get up the ladder, if you like, and just get, And I applied for the job and I got the job. And one of the colleagues that I was working with at the time said to me, well, of course, you probably got the job because of your ethnic background. They want to sort of redress the balance now with equal opportunities and the like. So they want to redress the balance and give, the likes of you guys a chance. I was absolutely horrified. I was horrified that it never even crossed my mind. And I think, and I would, oh yeah. And I would, and I hope that I got the job on my merit, and how I interviewed. And I think I did get the job on my merit and how I interviewed, but I hope they didn't give me that position, and I don't think they did, based on redressing the balance, for heaven's sake. Maybe that's a bit of insecurity on his part, but he said it nonetheless, and it stayed with me, like lots of other things. And of course, then you start wondering about it. But, I did push it away and think, no, it can't be. But it's not. It was a nasty thing to say. And because companies, education being a prime example, they had to show that they were employing people from some diverse backgrounds. And did I get the job because of that? I hope not.
Well, and all of that has come around again now. So, there's companies that are restructuring, and because they need to tick boxes. They need to include. And you can see it on, I don't really watch TV that often, but, every now and again when it comes on, or, I'm watching, I see adverts and I'm like, oh my goodness, it is really obvious now that you are trying to
intentionally,
to include, and
it's a bit embarrassing, to be honest.
It is a bit embarrassing, and it's embarrassing that it's taken, a long time for these companies to start doing that.
It's obviously a good thing too, but the fact that someone has to stop and think about that and intently hire or cast diverse crowd of people for something, or that's the ridiculous bit, is that it's just not a natural thing for someone to do.
When I see those adverts, I think, hello, we've always been here. What are you doing?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
All of a sudden.
Yeah.
About 40 years too late.
Exactly.
Well, I want to ask Abel, just to clarify, and what I said I think was right, that I think tell me if I'm wrong, son, but as I point out again, as you went on through life, you become more, in the last few years, you become more aware for whatever reason. I think you always were, and I get the sense you were always pride, and I think you were always proud of having that. Let's just call it a little bit of edginess towards you, and the stuff that you liked, and the influence of the music and the literature, even the clothes that you wore, who you hung out with, conversations that you have. So I can see that you embrace it all now, which is a great thing.
Yeah.
It's a great thing, and you don't, as Andrew said, you don't have a dilemma as such. You don't have a problem, do you? You like your sister. You're very proud. And you're pleased at the changes that you can see happening in front of you.
Yeah, I'm proud to feel different. I think, as Florence said, or how she felt to begin with, is people seeing her as being white and them not knowing that her grandma and great-grandparents are brown and very dark-skinned.
Yeah.
They don't see that you've inherited what they have or had been through, or whether that's traumatic or not. They don't see you as being what your parents or grandparents. They just see you as being white or light skinned or something else, and so they don't put that on you. But not in a bad way. It's just they're not aware of you and your history or your family's history. So no one's to blame as such. It's just.
I think the important thing is that and you do know.
Yeah.
And that's the only person that matters, isn't it? That you know inside who you are. You haven't got to prove anything to anyone else. You know who you are. You know exactly who you are. Your history, your family, your mum's side as well. The Irish side as well. Which is a great thing. Lots of history there. All of that is a great thing.
Sometimes it's nice when people do kind of say, "Oh, where are you from?" And then you've got it almost presents an opportunity for you to talk about your heritage, and in a proud way, and talk about where your grandma's from, where your father's from, and sometimes I like that when people are like, "Oh, where are you from? Are you?"
Well, there's you get that question in two different ways, though, don't you? It's either that curious, then genuinely interested, or it's a threat. I don't know how you say it, but where are you from? As in, you're not from here, are you? Tell us the truth. You're hiding something from us, kind of question. Yeah.
I wanted to. I suppose I'm asking me, and I'm asking you. Obviously, you both really. Although it's difficult, but it is important not to be. I don't know if you can or not. I'm not even sure of the answer. But are we does it define us? Our skin color, our heritage, our history, our ancestry. Does it define us, or are we outside of that? Are we people in our own right, if you like, not to be defined by those things?
We're not defined by it. No. Like if you can't forget who you are, your ancestry or anything, you can't just forget that. But I suppose if you woke up one day and decided that you didn't want anything to do with it, you could detach yourself. You're not defined by it as such.
But then again, you'd get reminded, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
I would anyway.
To ourselves, we're not defined by it, are we? But maybe to other people, is what you're saying, is other people define you as being brown.
Yeah.
It'll come back to you.
Do you understand what I mean, Andrew?
Yeah, totally. I think it partly defines who you are, not totally. Because you can't hide the fact of, certainly for us, Dan, because we're obviously slightly darker. It's always going to be evident that we have a background, not necessarily obvious that we are Pakistani, but
are we? Are we? I'm not. I'm not. Neither are you.
But no, I'm saying part of our heritage is that, and we can't. We don't hide the fact that we, part of us is that.
Yeah, and it's not that you'd want to, but we're defined in as much as the food that we're brought up on, or music that we listen to, or the fact that we go used to go to Tooting for lunch or like get that sort of thing, get the Bombay mix out when the family comes around, and look, those don't define us, but they're definitely they're not things that define us, but they definitely are part of our story or our why we're here now, why we're sitting on Zoom.
Here we are, our framework.
Yeah.
So to summarise, really, Abel, there's not too many bad experiences, and if there were bad experiences, you rode through them. You seem to be okay with it, or what you seem okay. It's not affected you too much, if at all, and all was well with the world. And you'll go. I think it's important to spread the love, isn't it? And be proud of who you are.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And we thank you for joining us on this episode of the Race Dilemma podcast. Thanks so much for just sharing. And
thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us on today's episode. If you've liked what you've heard, please subscribe on your favourite directory. And if you've liked it even more, then please rate us and leave a review on Apple Podcasts.
Again, if you would like to be featured on the Race Dilemma podcast, please reach out to us on theracedilemmapodcast@gmail.com. That's it from us, and we'll see you on the next episode.